Now, one of the things that really concentrated my mind and had an impact in terms of the way I practice as a therapist was the stuff that Stephen Porges speaks about and writes about, which is the Polyvagal Theory. And I've written quite a lot about the Polyvagal Theory elsewhere on this website, so I won't spend too much time into it here, but it's basically can be regarded as the science of safety. In other words, what's going on in our bodies that gives us a clue that we don't feel safe. So, for instance, when we go into fight or flight, when we go into shutdown, where we numb and feel as though we just want to hunker down from the world, this is actually the responses of our nervous system giving us a clue that at that moment we mustn't feel particularly safe. Now, this concentrated my mind a lot as a therapist, because one of the things I do notice, both in myself and in others, is that in terms of all the kind of, wonderful communication strategies that are out there, and in fact, one of the things I particularly like is nonviolent communication. And it was something I taught for a while as well, did workshops on. And yet, even that is very difficult to access when our nervous system starts to get really spiky. That we're in a fight or flight place. And it makes sense, doesn't it? Because if a lion were to enter the room now, it wouldn't make a lot of sense for us to start asking it some questions or to be telling it what our needs are and how we're feeling. We just want to run away. And so this kind of fight or flight response, I think, is really important to take notice of. And of course, the shutdown numbing response is important for us to pay attention to as well, because they're showing us that our client is not feeling safe in those moments. And so I'll often dig into those nervous system responses. And in fact, this thing which I often draw, that's us or our client. Sorry, my drawing's a little bit off today. This is the thing that they want. Why isn't it just easy for them to go and get it? And the answer is something dives in there and yells, stop. It is not safe. So there is a belief, there's a prediction that's been built at some point in our client's history that yells, stop, it is not safe, and prevents them from getting the change that they want. Now, when their nervous system kicks in here and says, stop, it is not safe, that's really useful information. Because the question that arises then for me is, where did their nervous system learn that it wasn't safe? What is it that occurred that led the nervous system to believe that getting the thing that they want is not safe? So, for instance, if you have a client, hopefully I'll draw them better this time, and what they actually want is to be able to, put their own needs into the equation. They always kind of sacrifice their own needs in favor of the needs of other people. Then when it comes to getting that change, we can ask what that looks like situationally. And when they come to actually enact that and put their own needs into the equation, there'll be something that yells, stop, it is not safe. And this, I think, is the reason why clients struggle with some of the changes. And so what they will do is keep the problem rather than make the unsafe change. And that makes perfect sense, doesn't it? Who wouldn't keep a problem if they were going to replace it with something that wasn't even safe, which was actually a bigger problem? Now, one of the things that I find helpful in terms of discovering how it came to be that the nervous system learned that this wasn't safe, and we'll know it's a nervous system, there will be some bodily discomforts in here. People feel them differently, but things like nausea and high heart rate, or a feeling of panic, or a feeling of numbness, depending on which way the nervous system has gone. But one of the ways we can actually find out is through something that I call the movie question. And the movie question is a nice little analogy. And basically what it says to the client is, let's imagine this is a movie about your life. And so we have this character, which happens to be you, but all movies work this way. And we can see that that person feels that it's not safe to put their needs into the equation. Now, if we had a character like that in a movie, what the director or the writer would probably want to do is show a scene or two so the audience understands how it was that this character came to have that understanding of safety. How did they learn that it was kind of dangerous to put their needs into the equation? And so what we can ask the client then is to basically say, if we were going to show a scene or two, maybe 3 scenes even, in this movie so the audience goes, oh, I get it, that makes perfect sense. I understand why this particular hero in the movie has that particular scare. What are the scenes that come to mind from your life that would make the audience kind of say, ah, that makes sense? Now, it's useful because it provides a little bit of distance, and a little bit of distance can be useful sometimes. That kind of separation from your actual self to this kind of movie version self. And it allows people to reflect. And clients come up with this very quickly. It's normally a very quick response. And I like this because I always like leaning on the client's own wisdom, their own ingenuity. And the client has a lot of knowledge, so it makes sense to lean into it. And so what you'll end up with there is maybe 3 scenes. And that's really useful because you both get an understanding now of how this kind of makes sense. It doesn't have to be 3 scenes, it could be less. And then if you were going to do some imaginal work around this, what you could then do is say, if the director said we can only show 1 scene to explain this, so the movie's not too long, we can only have 1 scene. What is that 1 scene that created this sense in the character, in the hero, that it's not safe to get what they want? And then what the client will do is pick 1 scene, the most impactful scene, the scene that really explains it to the movie audience, why it's become that way. And then, of course, you can do a number of things with that scene together with the aim of rewriting that old prediction into a new one, where that old data that the prediction is based on is replaced by a new prediction in the nervous system. So that the end result is that the old trauma responses and predictions have been literally erased. And so when the client here has this problem, and yet they want to get to that outcome, because the prediction has been altered, they find that they can make that change really, really easy. So let's just have a quick recap. First of all, we looked at Polyvagal Theory, which underlines the importance of safety. Secondly, we looked at safety as it applies to our little diagram of what happens when the change is hard. It's that the client tries to get the change that they want, but the nervous system will kick in and yell stop, just as it would do with anything else that you were aiming to do that wasn't safe. And that led us to this lovely question that I refer to as the movie question, which is basically to ask the client, if this character was in a movie and we needed to show a scene that told the audience why this particular character felt unsafe getting what they want, what would the scene be? And that can then lead us to doing all sorts of work, including things like imaginal work, rewind work, or whatever that will update that prediction.